And the manager did everything in the county. I think from snow removal and everything, did everything. Janitor in the courthouse, did everything. So they thought that we should try to do something, give them the opportunity to come up with something that makes sense for them. And I have some quotations there, and I think it would be just kind of redundant to go through them. But clearly their intent was that we're not going to do it ourselves. They trusted the legislature too, and they said we're going to trust that the legislature will implement our intent. And they did. They really did. They implemented that within a year and a half, I think. The legislature implemented the intent to provide more flexibility in county municipal government. And Dan Clark will talk about that. Then the second concern had to do with inadequate county powers. County powers. Now, for years and years and years, counties were really not a local government. Counties were the administrative arms of the state to do certain state functions at the local level, like elections and things like that. But increasingly, as you know, and we're not an urban state, but even in Montana, there was urban growth outside of municipal boundaries. And increasingly, county governments were faced to providing urban-type services to expanding areas and to solve disputes, resolve conflicts that came up in these new urban areas that were not part of municipalities. So, and the prevailing rule was that counties do not have ordinance-making powers. And so what the Constitution did is say that counties, this is for the first time, shall have ordinance-making powers to the degree provided by the legislature. And Bill maybe can address this a bit, but my understanding is that this is one area where not too much was done. I think counties still today have not been given very significant, Dan, maybe as you shake your head, maybe I still have peripheral vision, even though I can't see too good straight ahead, that maybe more can be done in that area, providing ordinance-making powers to county governments. And I see that there is some, this was kind of controversial, and look at some of those criticisms there, that last bullet. Unbelievable arrogance to give counties legislative powers, ordinance-making powers. It'll lead to duplicated services. Cities and counties will be doing the same thing. It'll lead to inequitable taxation. It might go beyond what is being done in Washington, California, and Hawaii. We wouldn't want to do that, but I don't think we have. Okay, the third concern, and this is really Bill Bronson's area, is inadequate municipal powers. Dillon's rule was followed. Dillon was a judge in Iowa. He wrote a treatise on municipal law. And Dillon's rule meant that municipalities have only the power specifically, clearly given to them by the legislature. And if there's any doubt, the doubt is resolved against the local government having the power. So it was a really, really strict rule. And what the Constitutional Convention did in Article 11 is they revoked Dillon's rule, and they said that local government power should be interpreted liberally, freely, in favor of the municipality. Then they provided home rule powers. And home rule powers in Montana are called self-government powers. The home rule movement began, I think, early in the 20th century. But I should have looked that up, but I think that's when. And there were three models And I give them there, and I'm not going to go through them. But the model of home rule powers that the convention liked the best was called residual powers. And it says a local government with self-government powers have all power except that denied them by the federal law because of the Supremacy Clause, by the state constitution, by state statutory law, and by the charter itself. The home rule charter could be a source of denial. So it kind of turned things on the head. So you don't look to see if you've been delegated the power. What a home rule unit looks to see if what we want to do has been taken away from us by state, federal law, or by the charter itself. But the idea was that was going to really enhance municipal and county power that chose to be self-government units. Because then they would not have to go to the legislature and say, please give us the power to build a parking garage. Or please give us the power to do this or do that. Now here's the problem though, and Bill will talk about this, that arguably the legislature has been far too strict with self-government units. And I suppose Bill will talk about some of the Supreme Court cases in Montana interpreting this. Because there's been a movement kind of centered in the Montana Association of Counties, the Montana League of Cities and Towns in the legislature. They're saying, for God's sakes, let's realize the intent of the convention, and let's give local governments, which are closest to the people, let's free them up a bit and give them more power. Lastly, the fourth concern, meaningful citizen participation. And you all know that the convention provided for something historic. National journalist Neil Pierce, who covered the convention, wrote, he was, I think he's no longer living, of happy memory. He says, there's never been anything quite like it in American history. That is, every 10 years, every municipality and every county, and many of you got your political start this way. I think Gene Bowman did, and Bill Bronson did, I'm sure some of you others did, that every 10 years, every municipality, every county shall provide for a elected local government study commission. And you study your government, and you give the people a choice between the present structure and an alternate structure. Then later, the Constitution was amended to make this optional, and Dan's going to talk about this. I have a few statistics about those first study commissions. There were 182, counting up the counties and the municipalities. There were 642 elected study commissioners. Now, this kind of follows the trend of the convention. In terms of gender, 71% were male, 29% were women. So that was a fairly high rate of female participation, far higher than was seen in the legislature. I think the convention had 19% of 19. Yeah. So that was one aspect. They were generally really well educated. A lot of small business people. Not a lot of lawyers. It was interesting. Bill wasn't a lawyer. Were you a lawyer at that time?
When I did it, I was a lawyer. It's a shame that they didn't have more involved.
So he'll talk about that. So this was a wonderful thing, and we will see. Has it realized its the expectation of the convention in terms of structure and powers and participation? So lastly, how do we judge the product? Article 11, the local government article. The committee's own judgment, probably Virginia Blend, but I didn't write that down. We have conceived our goal to provide options of self-determination by local governments, whether in a town of 25 people or a city of 80,000, in a county of under 500 or a county of 90,000. We feel we have accomplished this. And then I think the consensus judgment, certainly my judgment, is the committee, motivated by reform sentiments and not afraid to borrow from the best practice of other states, created one of the strongest articles in the Constitution. So, Dan?
Thank you. It's great to be here today. I want to thank Ken and his board for convening this. It's a real privilege to be visiting with all you, and I feel a bit overwhelmed that the capacity that exists here in this room is so great, and I feel just a neophyte. 1972, I can tell you where I was. I wasn't even in kindergarten yet. So great things happened 40 years ago, and I think we're still realizing the benefits and the forethought and vision that the delegates had at that time, particularly with local government and with the study commission that I'll be reviewing with you. I guess I just want to talk a little bit about the local government center and what we do and the world that I live in. Our mission, as it's written out in the Montana Code annotated, where I advise you, if you have a mission statement, make sure it's canonized in the code. It's very flexible once it's in there. But our mission says we do three things. Well, it's to build the capacity of local governments through technical assistance, research, and training. And so we travel all over the state, providing research, training, and technical assistance to local governments. Last week I was in Broadus. Next week I'll be in Glasgow, Culbertson, and Plainwood, and the following week I'll be in Eureka. So that's kind of the breadth and depth that we cover at the Local Government Center. We work a lot with local governments trying to help these elected officials or appointed officials understand their course and scope. What is it they're supposed to do? What's the structure they operate in and the powers that they possess? And then how to marshal those, both the structure and the power, understanding the separation of the powers, so that they can effectively govern their community. Well-meaning, very earnest people, but this is not the background in which they come from. And so we spend a lot of time helping them understand it. Once they get it, the light goes on, and it's really, that's why I travel around the state, because it's so fun to see the light go on in people's eyes, say, oh, I get it now. It doesn't always mean that the relationships are any better. But at least they understand it. Let me just give a quick census of what the state looks like when it comes to local government. You may or may not know or understand, but there's 125 incorporated municipalities in 56 counties. Of those 129 municipalities, 127 of them are exclusive municipalities. There's Anaconda, Deer Lodge, and Butte Silver Bowl, which are combined city-county governments. There's 118 municipalities that have a population of less than 5,000. Okay, so it gives us, what, 13 or 14 communities that have over 5,000 people in it. So these are very small, rural communities, somewhat isolated, lots of distance between communities, and they're doing the best they can given the resources they have. Of the counties, there's 36 counties that have less than 10,000 people. These are, and then on top of that, only 4 of Montana counties are smaller than Rhode Island. It's a large, vast of land, very few people, and then it's laymen. It's just citizens